Hi everyone, Patricia Warby, Alchemy Therapies here, and I want to talk today about food, something we kind of take for granted as an essential for life. Of course it is. We need it for energy. Our cells need energy to survive, and the way we as animals obtain our energy is from eating either other animals or plants. However, food also has an emotional component. And as you know, I work with people helping them to release emotional trauma and stuck emotions in their bodies. And so I kind of wanted to talk about how food can be used as an avoidance tactic or a control tactic for not dealing with your emotions. And the kinds of emotions that might trigger a craving would be things like guilt, anger, fear, grief, a sense of maybe humiliation or betrayal. All these emotions, they go very deep within the human being, and emotions are not just a mental construct. They're felt in the body, and they actually change our metabolism, and they affect the way we feel. They interact with our hormones, the neurotransmitters in our brain even, and they can create huge cravings for things if we're out of balance and if we're feeling overwhelmed in our emotions and we don't know how to process our emotions. And sadly, a lot of us are in that situation. And I know I get cravings for sweet things very often. And what I have to do is look beneath what's actually going on in my body. What am I actually feeling beneath the craving? And there's usually something I'm pushing back down. I'm just not wanting to look at because it feels overwhelming or uncomfortable, or I feel like I can't cope with it. And so food can be like a currency, really, for what you'd rather not look at. You can use the food to control things in a way that perhaps feels a little easier than dealing with the unpredictability of emotions. And so we have these natural urges, I guess, to eat, but they can become taken over by these incredible, strong, overwhelming back brain feelings of I've got to eat now. And it's not a choice. It's not a choice that you're making. That's why diets often don't work, because they work while you're in the situation of being encouraged and supported. But when the diet ends or the program ends and you're back with your normal emotions and your normal coping strategies, the old patterns will reemerge, of wanting to avoid, of wanting to stuff down all the uncomfortable things that are coming up in you. So it's no use really telling yourself you're going to do better next time, because that's using a conscious thought to try and override these unconscious processes or programs that you're running. Much better indeed is a way of looking at yourself compassionately and trying to be kind to yourself in those moments when maybe you've eaten more than you needed to, or you've eaten the kinds of foods that are not healthy. And kind of going inside and finding out what you're trying to avoid feeling, and then soothing it and learning ways and techniques to soothe. And I teach these techniques. I teach them when you work one-to-one with me, but I also teach them on the emotional audit program, which I run 2 or 3 times a year. And so if you're interested in learning techniques of how to soothe yourself without having this awful burn and a boom and bust cycle, where you kind of get all enthusiastic about something, about making a change in your life, and then it goes to the wall as usual. Because the thing is, we're vulnerable. We're vulnerable to our feelings. We're vulnerable to being overwhelmed, particularly when we're children and we have more challenge than support, or our nervous systems are already stressed and can't adapt to the current stressor. And these become patterns in our nervous system, even in adult life. So when we get stressed in adult life, we'll revert to the patterns we had when we were young. So if food was a sort of currency in your house, if it was used to control you, or it was used to punish you, or in fact you learned to punish yourself with food, either the absence of food or the overeating of food, then these patterns become very embedded and are very difficult to change if you're just trying to use willpower or, conscious thought. Because, as I've said, they don't come from a conscious part of your brain, they come from your emotional brain, which is right at the back, towards the back of your brain, beneath your thinking hemispheres, the cortex. And it can leave us feeling very out of control, actually, when we realize we're doing this, but it doesn't seem to work to tell ourselves off or to shame ourselves in, the way we do. It's actually much better to show yourself compassion and to learn how to soothe and realize that actually the cravings are there for a purpose. They're not there to harm you. They're there to divert your attention away from what your mind and body believe is a very dangerous thing. So whether it's, overwhelming emotions that you can't deal with, or a situation that you feel is out of control, these cravings will come to kind of keep you safe. But of course, they're not. They're keeping you stuck in a pattern that you are unaware of and unable to change. So giving yourself permission to choose differently is not an act of willpower. It's an act of self-compassion, self-love. It's about going within to find out that vulnerability is not necessarily weakness. It can actually be a strength. It's the source of your creativity. And to be able to rewire that, you're going to need support and help, either through self-soothing techniques, which use usually touch. I use something called havening, which is a wonderful self-touch technique, which uses stroking down the arms or the face to give your body the messages that it's safe in this moment. And that helps to stabilize your nervous system while you create a new pattern, a new neurological pattern in your brain. Your brain has the ability to rewire itself. This is something we now know. It's called neuroplasticity. But think of it as auto rewiring, because that's what it is. It's linking different neurons together in a new pattern. And it allows you to change old habits, old coping strategies that you adapted perhaps from your childhood that haven't been updated ever since. And it does so without creating, more of the same, more shame, more guilt, which is completely negative, and you simply don't want to go down that route. You want to be able to do this in the light of compassion, in the way that allows you to move forward as an adult with different choices. And so that's kind of what I encourage people to do. And it's really, really powerful. And it's a lot easier, I can really say, than just trying to overwhelm with saying to yourself, well, okay, I'll do better next time. So what we're doing with a lot of these processes, with food, with any form of habitual thing that you're involved in, whether it's overeating, drinking, smoking, any form of habit really, has a purpose. It has a purpose to help you. And what we're doing here is we're giving your body an alternative way of providing that help. And so you're choosing differently, learning to forgive yourself for the patterns you've adopted that did work at a certain time but are now maladaptive. And we're creating a new future for you by transforming the past experience into, well, gold, really, making the past not something to be avoided, but something that is allowing you to transform yourself into the person you really want to be, the person that you really are without your story. So ask yourself, who am I without my story? Can I forgive myself for being where I am and for adopting certain patterns that I have done? And what is it I want to do with my life? And how might I best do that if I was able to live compassionately? Compassion comes from within. It's not just something you give to other people. It's something that you must really learn to feel for yourself. And I had to forgive myself a lot of my own vulnerability. Indeed, I had to admit to myself that I am a highly sensitive person and I am quite vulnerable, despite my coping strategy of appearing to know everything and be able to do anything, which is just not true at all. I do feel things very deeply. So anyway, transformation is possible for everybody. And certainly in the area of addictions, this is actually a lot easier when you work through the body, which connects with your unconscious brain to transform these kind of hardwired patterns. If that sounds interesting to you and you want to know more, I'll put some links in the description below and you can get in contact. Take care, everyone. Bye for now.